here's the awkward part for us. I said at the top this was a little awkward. Here's why this is awkward for us on this show and for me as its anchor. NBC News will not make anyone available to discuss this story with us on the air. Now, that may change in days ahead. You'd think that if they're going to talk to anybody about this, we might reasonably get a leg up on getting interviews with any NBC News executives to explain this decision, if only because we're right down the hall.
Welcome back to America's Forum, Hour 2, with Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth, and we just heard Rachel Maddow on MSNBC reacting to the Brian Williams story.
Yeah, that suspension without pay coming after Williams misstated facts in a handful of reports, specifically his experience in the early days of the Iraq War.
So now a 6-month unpaid suspension. We're so pleased to be joined on this anchor desk by an old friend, former NBC News correspondent Ike Seamans. We're also joined via Skype by the managing editor of Newsmax.com, Alina Hernandez. And Ike, NBC News released a statement about Brian Williams. This statement reads in part, dealing with the whole Iraqi fire concept, quoting now, "It then became clear that on other occasions, Brian had done the same while telling that story in other venues. This was wrong and completely inappropriate." Now, we should stress you did not work with Mr. Williams. Your time at NBC News was before that.
Actually, I did.
Oh, you did?
Yes, he was there when I was there. I work with him, I know him, and I like him. But in our business, he committed the unpardonable sin. You know, the only thing that network news, the ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, Newsmax are built on is honesty, credibility, and truth. And when that is lost, and when it's lost because the face of a news division perpetrated this, it's really serious. Now, J.D. and Miranda, I wrote a column in the Miami Herald, which is in a lot of newspapers now, about this, and I've been getting all kinds of responses. The responses that I covet the most are from network people.
And we're looking at it right now from the article that you wrote for the Miami Herald.
Here's a perfect example of what network people at NBC, this came from a cameraman who was actually worked with Brian, not on this story, but others. He said, "Thanks for saying what needed to be said. I called out Brian Williams. We saw nightmares that many Americans can only imagine. We have experienced things way above," his words, "anything that Brian could have imagined." I'm also getting other comments from people. What's the big deal? We all know that news lies. Fox lies, MSNBC lies. And I said, they're not necessarily lying. That's their point of view. And if you're watching those particular outlets, well, you already believe those points of view, and you're looking for them for affirmation. So, but for a major broadcast network to do this, it's unprecedented and shocking.
I want to go, first off, I want to give our viewers who are not always familiar with your background, you have a very extensive background, you've been to 90 different countries, you've covered war, you cover conflict, you were in the military. While you didn't work side by side with Brian Williams, you did work for the same network, and I think that's what you meant. Being a seasoned journalist like you are, do you agree with NBC? Did they make the right decision here, or is that enough? And if other people were aware of this, surely they were. Aren't they just, some would be saying they're just as guilty for not saying anything.
Yes, and I've made this point in my analysis. Yes, what they did, in my opinion, was correct. Did it go far enough? No, I think it's a first step. I think they want to let it play out a little bit further. They also want to see what it's going to do to their ratings. He could be totally innocent of anything, but if his ratings plummet, he's gone.
But you said you were aware of his reputation for this, that people had talked about this for
years.
Yes,
I have many friends who, let's just back up an overview. My biggest concern of this is everyone's going to think that every reporter who did a combat assignment is like him. It will embellish when very few do.
Alina, is that fair? Do you agree with Ike?
I do. My question is 6 months enough? Is he going to be able to come back and just regain his seat as an anchor? Is his credibility shot for good?
Elena, in my opinion, his credibility is shot for good. I think they're just letting this play out, but he is gone. I don't see any way that he can be saved.
Well, So you're just stating flat out that for all intents and purposes, we will not see him back, even with the 6-month suspension. You'd think the damage is too
and
great.
you raised a question that's very important. What about others? Reporters in combat zones do not work in vacuums or alone. They work as team members.
Right.
Anchors go in with an entourage that would make President Obama jealous. Producers, the best crews, the best everything, and they know the truth.
And
And
we're
one
gonna talk
constant is time.
Yeah.
That 4-letter word, we're out of it, but we're coming back. More with Ike Seamans right after this on America's 4.